Well, there was a tweet that IWDominate put out earlier in the week that got some
Yes.
people riled up across
Yeah.
Twitter and Reddit, and the question was, or I guess, do you have the tweet in front of you?
I got the tweet. I can read it.
So take it away.
He says, yeah, so I will dominate tweeted, hot take, the best player in the world will never be a support player. If we do a draft tomorrow, I can pick from every player in the league. I'm first picking Viper. Support is so much easier to play than mid slash ADC at a pro level. The best mid slash ADC will be greater than the best support as a player. Now, I'm just going to come off the bat and say I totally disagree, but mostly just because of the first sentence, which is the best player in the world will never be a support player. I mean, right now, I do think the consensus best player in the world is Carrier, and I
Has
know
been
dominate
for
in,
maybe a year now.
and I know in like some of the replies later, I will dominate says that himself, so he does acknowledge that like everybody else says that it's Carrier. I just, me personally, I cannot see how it's not Carrier at the moment.
I
But I'll
think.
acknowledge that I don't watch a lot of LPL, so I'll acknowledge that.
Well, it's important to note that, and you kind of said it right at the beginning, before or just after you read the tweet out, that his first point, his first sentence, and his second sentence are two completely different points. And
Yes, they are different takes.
I think that's where a lot of the controversy lies, because I mean, just read the first point out again. It was just that support will never be the best. Just read the first sentence again, so you have the exact words.
The first sentence is the best player in the world will never be a support player, and it's like
So
instantly like
right off,
wrong.
yeah, exactly, right off the bat, that is basically false, because I don't know about everybody else, but feels like the community, for the most part, has agreed unanimously that Carrie has been the best player since last year's MSI, basically.
I think I might have even said this on this show before, but I'll say it again. When I was watching Carrier's Thresh, I couldn't stop thinking that this guy might be scripting. The only reason I know he's not scripting is because he's playing on one of the league's PCs. But I was like, is there a way this guy's scripting? Like, these hooks are way too damn good. And I'm not even kidding, by the way. People will think that I'm exaggerating. I'm not kidding. The thought of like scripting went through my head. I'm like, these hooks look so unnatural, but there's no way that he's cheating. I don't think he's cheating, but like that was actually what went through my head. And so, if you ask me, he's the only support in the world that hard carries as much as he hard carries. Like, I think just one of the reasons why Dom will say that mids or ADs are naturally better is because usually those are the guys that you see completely taking over games. But I would argue that carry as support takes over games and hard carries 1v9 as support. So, I mean, I don't care what role you're doing. If you're 1v9 in the game, you're an MVP in my mind if you can do that over and over and over again.
Yeah, and then to get to his second point that he makes, is saying that if you were doing a draft, and what he means by draft is like a traditional sports draft where you're picking from an available pool of players, that you would always pick mid or ADC first. And I think that is a completely fine point, and an argument I actually agree with. I think I would also throw jungle into the equation, because if it was me, I'd probably be taking a jungler first overall.
Canyon, who are you taking?
I mean, not like, if we ignored this year of LCK, it would be Canyon, but Canyon didn't necessarily have the greatest the split so far. But let's ignore the last 4 months that we've seen of Canyon, because for me, it'd be Canyon. Canyon is my number one overall pick, and would be for the last 3 years now.
See, now I disagree with the second part of his take as well because I am taking Carrier. I think what kind of to the point that he's making that like supports don't really carry that hard is I think Carrier is that much better than the next best support. And I think that's an even better reason to take the support. So I would probably agree with him if it weren't for Carrier not existing, then I would probably look to take a mid, AD, jungle, something else. But I actually think if I had first pick overall world and I could take anyone, I'm definitely taking the best player in the world.
One other wrench that I want to throw into this problem here, maybe something that he assumed or other people aren't taking into consideration, is role swapping players. I know this is going to come a bit out of left field, but one of the takes that LS has been pretty adamant about for like years now is that if he was picking his like all-time league roster, he'd put Faker at support. And
Hmm.
I've always agreed with that, because just the way that, Faker's like pretty cerebral in terms of how he plays the game. He's never really been, apart from his early days of League, he's never been the better mechanical player. Um, I guess I shouldn't say he's never been because he was when he was like completely shitting on everybody else. But for the most part, since like season 7 or 8, basically, he's never been one of the best players in the world mechanically. So if we were also allowed to pick a team and then role swap players, I would also think that you could make a fine argument for a mid laner swapping to support over your traditional supports.
I see. And in all fairness, that is a point that Dom brings up in some of the replies that like there's a lot of people that have role swap to support, but not the other way around. To me, I don't that is kind of irrelevant to me. Like I don't really care. Like just because someone role swap to support doesn't mean the role is easy. It just means that the role requires a lot of game knowledge. And usually the guys that role swap to support have been playing the game for a long freaking time. So that to me, I didn't really like the role swap argument. But with all that said, I don't mind his arguments, everything past the first sentence. I don't mind his arguments. I just don't necessarily agree with them. I do mind the first sentence. The best player in the world will never be a support.
Yeah,
That like I just disagree with that straight up. That but yeah, the rest
it's
I
scary. Yeah.
think yeah, in my opinion it is. And I think a lot of people agree with that as well. But I love Dom throwing out takes like this because I think it's just I don't know, I think they're fun conversations.